And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Shawn Kevin Jason, seasoned researcher, theorist, and speaker in the realm of unexplained phenomena, with a particular focus on the implications of RetroCausality and synchronicity. His first-hand encounter with a black triangle UFO near Area 51 in 1996 propelled him into the spotlight, leading appearances on various media platforms where he shares his vast experience and insights on the interconnectedness of time and events. Shawn, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Thank you for having me, Jeff. It's a pleasure.
Well, Shawn, I think it would be best if we start with that UFO experience and go from there.
Well, it was March 27th of 1996. I was at work at the time. It was about 9 p.m. in the evening. And working in the kitchen at the time. It was before I got my career started in IT. So I was doing pizza delivery and cleaning the kitchen. And I heard a voice tell me to go to Area 51. The voice is not something that was hang on, just trying to get my thoughts here. The voice is not something I wasn't, unfamiliar with. It's something I've been experiencing since my teenage years. So when I heard this voice tell me to go Area 51, it was a surprise as in regards to the situation, but not something I was totally unaware of or not used to.
Let me stop you for one moment. Do you think that voice is an ET or a spiritual guide that's with you, like a guardian angel or what some people may call their higher self?
Actually, I know exactly what the voice is, and it did take me many, many years to figure it out. But that's an easy idea to come across or think of. People say, "Well, it was God, or it's your higher self. It's your spirit guide, disembodied soul, maybe a distant relative." Some kind of military technology implanting voices in your head, or you're just schizophrenic. Just a long list. But actually, what I found out was it was none of those and something we really never considered. But anyway, the voice told me to go to Area 51. Typically, when I would hear the voice, as with the other occasions, there's a physical side effect that comes with it. Usually, it feels like butterflies in your stomach, kind of like that stage fright, nervous butterflies. And then, you would get like this weightless kind of feeling, like a roller coaster ride, or, you're driving really fast and you hit that hill and you just kind of feel weightless in your stomach for a second. So it's kind of like a cross between those two. And it seems to originate around the like solar plexus area. So you would get that physical sensation at the same time I would hear the voice. And it would last just long enough, as the voice is speaking. And it was usually strong enough you would kind of hunch over. I would hunch over when I would get this sensation and hear the voice. So it told me to go to Area 51, and I'm thinking, that's great. I've been to Area 51 many times before then. There was only one reason I went out there, was to see a UFO, and all the times I'd been out there, I hadn't seen anything yet. And so I knew if the voice was telling me to go out there, then something was going to happen, and I could only hope it was some kind of UFO encounter. So I'm working, but the problem is I'm at work. I'm supposed to close that night, so I'm not going to get out of there anytime soon. And that's a problem, obviously, if I'm supposed to be there leaving right away. And that's my thought. I'm thinking, if I'm needed to leave and get there soon, how am I going to get out of work? And ironically, like maybe a minute after that, my manager calls me over, tells me, it's a slow night, business is slow, asks me if I would like to leave early. I'm thinking, wow, that's perfect. It just, right after this, she's asking if I want to leave early and cut out. So sure, I took the opportunity. head out of there. I didn't own a camera at the time, so I was gonna swing by my mom's house where my brother lives. At the time, he was still young, and borrow his camera. It was a 35 millimeter Pentax camera that my father had passed down to him, and figured I'd swing by, grab the camera and some film, and head on out on my way and go home, get changed, whatnot. So I swung by, and of all the times, because I've borrowed a camera before, many times to take it with me when I got to Area 51, but this night the camera was nowhere to be found. So I just head out of there, raced home, which was on the other end of town near Nellis Air Force Base, and got home, got out of the uniform, got changed, put on something. I had a lot of alien clothes at the time, T-shirts. It was pretty popular in the '90s, of course, at X-Files. So I found my most flamboyant alien T-shirt I had, which just actually I still have the shirt. I saved it, but it's just humongous gray alien face on it, green shirt, and told the wife that I'm heading out to Area 51 for the night, be back in the morning, which was not unusual for me, as usually what I did was go out at night. And normally my trips were always planned. It was never like on the fly. It was just like, I planned it out a week or two in advance. That's the day I'm going out. But this was the first time I just like, I'm going right now, and of course, because of the voice. So I head out and take Las Vegas Boulevard until I meet up on the freeway, and head out of town, get off on the Apex exit, which is Highway 93. And, driving along Highway 93, you can see Las Vegas in the background, city lights still glowing up the night sky. And really, I'm like 15 minutes out of town, not on the road for very long. And there's a bend when Highway 93 cuts into this valley, between these two mountain ranges on either side, and pitch black. It's dark out there, middle of the desert, desolate. And I see some lights off in the distance below the horizon. So my first thought is, this is another car, first vehicle I've seen. So there's another car on the road approaching me, but they're still way off in the distance. So didn't put much thought into it and continued driving. And the whole time in my mind, I'm playing, the voice in my head, go to Area 51, go to Area 51. And I'm thinking, what is out there waiting for me? Why does it want me to go to Area 51? What exactly is going to happen? Was it aliens? Was it not? I didn't really know what to expect. I had all these expectations of what I wanted. I really wanted, that classic Contact 50s kind of encounter where they land, they come out, greet you, some ambassador or something of that sort, you would hear about in the 50s. And they give you a tour of the solar system, answer all your questions about life and the universe, that kind of thing. So it's just playing over and over in my head as I'm driving and speeding along, trying to get there. It's a 2-hour drive from Vegas, so it's not a quick trip. So I had plenty of time to think about what was going to happen or may happen. And as I'm driving, I realize that light I see off in the distance is not moving. And I can tell I'm getting closer to the light, but the light seems to be stationary in one spot. So my thought is, okay, maybe somebody broke down on the side of the road. This was before cell phones. You couldn't just jump on a cell phone, call for help. So I'm debating on whether or not I should stop and help these people or just drive right by. Obviously I felt like rushed to get to Area 51 because I didn't want to miss whatever was going to happen. But at the same time, I didn't want to leave someone stranded on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere. So I'm playing this out in my head, and I decided, well, I'll slow down. If they look like decent folks, I'll stop and help. Otherwise, if they look a little questionable, I'll just keep going. And it was about time I made that decision when I noticed the light wasn't actually on the road. I could tell that the light was above the road, and I can see it illuminating the road below it, but the light was hovering over the road. And I immediately kind of slammed on my brakes because my first immediate thought was, it's a police helicopter. And as quickly as that thought came into my head, it left. I was like, why in the hell would a police helicopter be all the way the hell out here in the middle of nowhere looking for speeders, like just above the road? It didn't make any sense. I'm thinking, maybe, maybe this is it. Maybe this is why the voice told me to go to Area 51, or part of it. So I had my binoculars I kept in the car. They were, I think they were 50 by 50. They were really strong. So I decided to try driving while I'm using my binoculars to see if I can get a glimpse of whatever it is before I get there. And through the binoculars, as I'm driving, I can see definitely lights over the road, but not enough to really tell me what it was. Just that for sure there's something hanging over the road. And from there, I threw my binoculars in the back seat and stepped on the gas and raced to try to hurry up and get to whatever this was before it decided to leave. And it stuck around. It stayed right where it was. And as I'm pulling up underneath it, I can see that there's 9 lights and like a arrow formation, all white lights. And the craft was completely black. You couldn't really see the craft. You can see it blocking out the sky, because the sky was still, when you're that close to Vegas, the light pollution illuminates the sky to where it's not pitch black. And this craft was darker than the night sky. So you can make out the triangle formation. And the back end of it, it was so low to the ground that it actually cut off my view of the horizon. So to the side of the highway, there's a mountain range kind of northwest of Highway 93 at this spot. And the back end of the craft was just chopping off the range. You couldn't even see the mountaintops. So it was an equilateral black triangle with these 9 white lights on the underside of the craft. And actually, I got a model here of the craft I can show you.
Right.
You have to, part in it is actually seen better days, but it still works and is certainly enough to give you an idea. Let's see. So you can kind of get an idea there, the craft. And then the top. Now, at the time, I couldn't see the top of the craft.
Mm-hmm.
That would come later. But, when I pull up, I'm actually basically parked right underneath this front light. It was directly over my car. And then the rest of it trailed off the side of the highway.
Was it making any sound?
It was completely silent, no noise whatsoever. And my car, typically I was familiar with enough cases at this time that people often report mechanical failures, electrical failures when, they're in close proximity to a UFO. None of that. Car was great. And in fact, I was revving the gas while I was there, and you can feel the car swaying back and forth when you're revving the engine, and I can hear it, but it was windy that night. So I had the window rolled down. And you can hear the wind, especially when you're out in the desert and you get a good gust blowing. You can hear the wind blowing through the brush, and you got that noise from the brush. But that was louder than any noise. If this craft was making any noise at all, it was so quiet that the brush, the noise from that was drowning out the craft.
Well, what were you feeling at the time, as well as what were you thinking?
Well, I mean, I'm just in disbelief. Shock. I mean, not totally unexpected, because, the voice told me to go to Area 51, and I'm thinking, well, here it is, or something is here. But the lights is what really got me, because the craft, you're looking at the craft, and I'm thinking, well, I don't want to waste any time. The craft is pitch black. No matter how hard I stare at it, I can't make out any details on the skin of this craft, nothing. But the lights, however, offer an amazing amount of detail, from the embossment on the glass front of the bulbs, to the mirror finish on the inside, to the filament coil. I mean, when I was looking at these lights, my thought was, they may as well say GE. They should say GE stamped on the center of these things, because they look like a traditional man-made human light bulb.
Are you saying that this craft was made by us?
That's what I believe. And I built a second model of the actual light bulbs on the craft. So you can see right here, this is a reproduction of the light that was used on the craft. And I can actually, hopefully it doesn't, okay. That might not work. You get the idea,
Right.
of course, with the filament illuminated. So there were 9 of these lights on the bottom of the craft, like I said, in that V formation. And I'm looking at these lights and I'm thinking, there's nothing alien, extraterrestrial at all about these light bulbs. And the craft itself, Black Triangle, it really resembled a stealth aircraft. Not that it was, but the kind of design, I'm sure this craft could easily evade radar just based on its design alone. And the fact that it's painted black, or black in color, blends in with the night sky as another stealth aspect. So I'm a bit confused, because here's the voice telling me to go Area 51, but I'm seeing something that you know potentially looks to be man-made.
Oh.
And yet at that time, based on how far I got my UFO research at that time, it never crossed my mind. I was totally on board with the whole, is alien or nothing. All UFOs are alien. There are no man-made UFOs, period. And of course, that encounter threw a curveball at me, and I had to rethink things after that. So anyway, watching the graph, looking at it, and I decided to grab my binoculars, because I wanted a really close up, like in your face look at these bulbs. I figured with the binoculars that close, if there was any kind of markings on these bulbs, like I said, a GE stamp on the center of it, anything like that, I should be able to make it out. And keep in mind, the craft was within 20 feet of the ground. So it was like I could have spit on it if I had a good, breeze behind me. And, or, bust out the light bulbs if I had got out of the car and threw rocks at it. That wouldn't have been a problem. And so I decided to reach for my binoculars behind me when I threw them in the back seat, but I couldn't find them. So I knew I was going to have to take my eyes off the craft and actually spot the binoculars to find them, because I'm trying to do that, reach around my back and feel for them without taking my eyes off the craft, and I had no luck. So turn around, I see them, I grab them, turn back around, it's gone. And I scan the horizon, and no noise, no nothing. I had no idea it left. And I scan the horizon, I can see it off to it would have been basically my 8 o'clock position from where I was at. And it was just hugging the ground. So imagine, like in the movie, in the Star Wars movies, those pod racers, speed racers, how they're racing across the ground, but they always stay a particular distance from the ground. It's kind of how this thing was flying. So the ground, regardless of what the contour of the ground did, the craft stayed. If it was 20 feet, it stayed 20 feet all the way. And that's when, through the binoculars, I could see the top of the craft. That was basically a short tetrahedron. And completely black, a charcoal gray black. And I'm watching it fly across, still silent, no noise. And that mountain range I was talking about, that it obstructed my view of, it's heading towards. So usually in UFO sightings, people, it shoots out of sight, straight up gone kind of deal. Not this craft. It was like driving, like I said, hugging the ground. But rather than fly up and go over the mountains, it climbed it. Kind of like it stayed 20 feet from the ground, and it just went up the side of the mountain like that, and then over the top, and then down the other side. And that was it. And I stuck around for a few minutes longer, waiting to see if it maybe went over another mountain behind that, another mountain behind that. But, I lost sight of it at that point. And, I'm just super excited at this point. I'm thinking, this was just a prelude. This was just the beginning, the introduction. I still got to get to Area 51 because there's still more to happen. There's more waiting for me. And, stepped on the gas and hit it and continued on my way out to Area 51. Now, when I got out there, that was it. There was nothing else that happened that night. There was no other sighting, encounter, anything unusual. That was it. Turned around after hanging out there for probably a half an hour, turned around and drove back home. And woke up the wife, told her, what happened. And she was kind of like, oh, that's nice. Rolled over, went back to bed.
All right, I feel like you're leaving out a big piece of the puzzle here because
Okay.
you've never completely shared with me the source of the voice. And I need to understand or want to understand the connection between that voice and the UFO.
Okay. So the voice, now, like I mentioned, that night wasn't the first time or the last time I heard the voice. There were multiple occasions in which I heard this voice. And that was the only one that had anything to do with UFOs. The other events were relevant to what was happening in my life at the time. So when it first happened, I was a teenager in Las Vegas, growing up on the streets, came from a troubled home. So I was running around with the wrong crowd, always getting in trouble and on the lookout for the police. Because the last thing I wanted was to get busted by the cops for anything I was doing and dragged home or worst off in juvie and then get, beat when I get home by my father. And, it was like the worst thing that could happen. So getting caught by the cops was my biggest fear. And one day, my friend and I are kind of just hanging out on a street corner down from his house. And we're just kind of shooting the crap, trying to figure out what we're going to do, what we're going to get into next kind of situation. And I have my back to the intersection, and he's just talking to me, jibber jabbering, whatever, and in the middle of that, I get this strong impression, like this knowing, that a cop car is approaching from behind towards the intersection. And I just absolutely, for whatever reason, know there's a cop car coming, but I couldn't explain it. And so I interrupted my friend mid sentence and said, there's a cop car approaching from behind, isn't there? And he just got this dumbfounded look on his face. His jaw dropped wide open and he's just staring at me like, and I didn't even have to turn around. I can just tell by the expression on his face that I nailed it. And I look around, and sure enough, there's a Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department vehicle, black and white, pulling up to the intersection. And we're both looking at the cop. He's looking back at us, and he makes his turn at the intersection and goes on down the street. It's a small residential intersection, not like a main big street, but just a little neighborhood street. And turned back around at him, and he's like, "How in the hell did you know that?" I said, "I don't know. I just knew. I absolutely just knew that this cop car was approaching, and could not explain it." But after that moment, I knew, even though I couldn't explain how or why I knew I could do it again. For whatever reason, I knew, if I did it once, there's no reason I couldn't do it again. And I went into it with that belief. And sure enough, as we're getting in trouble and, running the streets, doing our thing, the second time it happened was different than the first. The first time it was just knowledge, just a knowing aspect to it. The second time, though, it was like an electrified feeling where your hair just stands up. You just got this surge of energy where your hair is standing up all over, and you kind of got a sense that a cop car is nearby. And I can tell you what direction the cop car was. So as we're out getting into trouble, I'd be like, oh shit, there's a cop car this way or a cop car that way. You know, let's, avoid this cop or whatever, basically chill out kind of thing. And every time it was right on. It was on so much that my friend had nicknamed me Radar, which was kind of a funny nickname because it would fit into my theory later, being a palindrome. And it got so strong that one time we were chilling in his front yard, just hanging out at his house, and this car rolls up on his house, real slow. And this was a bad neighborhood, so when you see a car kind of rolling really slow down the street, you pay a lot of pay attention, because typically how drive-bys in that neighborhood started. So we're worried, that any minute, his car is going to roll down his windows and stick some guns out and start shooting, which we've seen, a number of times. They slow down in front of his house, and then they start pulling away, and I'm like, and it hit me. I was like, oh shit. I knew right then and there these were cops, undercover cops, and they're coming to arrest him. But I had no reason to believe it at that point, but I just knew that's what was going to play out. And so they pulled away, and they start going down the street, and they get to actually the same intersection where it first began, where I heard, knew that cop car was approaching from behind. So they get to that intersection, and they flip a U-turn, and I'm like, oh crap, here it comes. And he's like, and I told my friend, this is what's going to happen. Those are cops. They're coming back to arrest you. And he's like, oh, you're full of it. There's no way. It's not going to happen. Yeah, whatever. They raced into his driveway, jumped out of his car. He was like, we both ran into the house as they're coming back. And his mother answers the door as they come banging on it, and is like, we're here to arrest, so and so and so, because we have a warrant for his arrests. And it's like, well, he's not here. It's like, bullshit, we just saw him in the property in the front yard and running out of the house. So, the gig was up. He had to go out, did his time in juvie and whatnot. And after that, anytime, I said anything to do with cops, my friends paid attention, and often it got to the point where they brought me along, because I was like that human radar detector, help keep them out of trouble if I sense there's a police presence nearby. So that's how it started. But the voice actually came later on in that same year, when I was ditching school, the first time I heard the voice. So I was going to Rancho High School, and down on Eastern Boulevard, which is just down the street from the high school, was a lot of businesses where we would hang out. One of which was an arcade, a pizza parlor, things like that. And so I'm ditching school. I showed up, rode the bus to school, got off the bus, decided I'm not going that day, walked away from the grounds before the first bell rang. And there's a string of businesses right on Eastern that I decided to ditch and hide behind, until at least it was late enough in the day that the arcade opens up and I can go hang out there for the rest of the day. So I'm kind of crouched behind this business, hiding behind one of the doors, sitting there smoking my cigarettes, and just kind of trying to stay out of view of the main roads, because being right down the street from school, there's truant officers everywhere patrolling the streets, and you don't want to be seen walking around, because you're going to get busted immediately and taken back to school. And I'm sitting there, and I hear this voice yell, "Run!" I was like, "Run!" Like your whole life depended on it. You better get your butt up and just run. And it freaked me the hell out, because I'm like, where did this voice come from? And it sounded audible. It sounded like someone was standing next to me, yelling in my ear, just run. And it's playing over my head, run, run, run where? Run how fast? Run why? What? It blew me away. And I didn't know what to make of it, what to do, but it scared me enough that I just ran. I just picked a direction and I just ran. So I ran around the side of the business towards the street that it's on, which was an offshoot of Eastern, which was like a main big drag street. And as soon as I hit the sidewalk, that's when I see it. 5 truant officers were converging on my position, 3 coming from my right, 2 coming from my left. And they were basically right on top of me at this point. And I just decided to shoot straight through the street. In front of me is basically a large cinder block wall that goes all the way down. And I decided I'm going to just shoot straight for this wall and try to get over it. As I hit the street, all 5 cars are basically converging right on me. One of them nearly runs me over. And at the same time, they're all slamming on the brakes. These truant officers are jumping out of their vehicles, trying to grab me. And I just booked it straight for this wall. Did a flying leap at it to where I actually landed feet first on the side of the wall and ran up the side of this wall and up and over it. Something I've never done before or after. I don't think I could do something like that, but I just basically almost like kung fu up this side of this wall and over it, and jumped into a backyard with 2 German shepherds that were right on top of me as soon as I get over. So I keep running, get to the other side of this person's yard, about to get over the fence when one of them grabs my pants legs and almost pulls me back into the yard. I was able to shake off the dog, got over the fence, and just kept running and running and running. Went across the street to another yard, over another street, another yard, kept going until I felt I was far away enough that it was safe. I found someone's backyard with a bunch of foliage and trees and bushes, found a bush to hide behind, and I just stuck there until I heard the lunch bell, which was like hours later. And I'm just chilling in this backyard, and I'm still kind of absorbing what just happened, because this was my first experience with the voice. And I forgot to mention that that physical sensation I had when it told me to go Area 51, same thing with that episode. It happens every time. So, the physical sensation goes hand in hand with this voice. And I'm really just trying to make sense of what just happened, and how did this voice know that all these truant officers were converging on my position, and were they in fact there for me, or was it just a coincidence that I ran out just when all these truant officers were passing by, which seemed highly unlikely. So a couple weeks went by, and I decided to ask the truant officers, about the situation. I figured, weeks later, they ain't gonna bust me for ditching school long after the fact. And one of the guys the students there, we nicknamed RoboCop, at the time. This was in the late 80s. And there's a popular movie, and this guy was kind of really strat built. So we nicknamed him RoboCop. So I figured he was one of the friendliest guys on the staff, the security staff. And I approached him, so you remember a couple of weeks ago, you guys came out to this location and you chased this kid and he jumped over a wall. And he's like, "Oh, you're talking about Spider-Man." I'm like, "What? Spider-Man?" "Yeah, that's what we called him. The way he walked up that wall and jumped over it, we nicknamed him Spider-Man." It's like, "That was me." It's like, "Oh, okay." And so why were you guys there? How did you know I was ditching? And so apparently the business I was hiding behind, was near the back door. One of the employees happened to look out because I had a window in the door, happened to look out the window and saw me and called the school and reported me, a truant off, to the truant offices. And that's how they knew where to come and knew I was there. So that was my first experience with the voice.
Oh, that's amazing.
And that it just gets crazier with each experience I have with this voice. And eventually, many years later, figuring out what this voice was and how it works. But even I don't know if you really want to go into every example with this voice.
No, I want to know what it is and how it works.
So the voice, so causality, cause and effect, the arrow of time. We experience it every day, normal part of life. We're used to it, like dominoes. You knock down the first domino, the second, the third, and it just goes in order. That's not entirely accurate, as I've learned, is that time is not, we experience time linear, but we're acting on and responding to things in the future that are influencing the past. So this voice, what I've come to conclude is a control signal. And there is a control system that is responsible for interface and consciousness with space-time. And this system is there in place checks and balances when we experience retrocausality to keep our experience with reality self-consistent so that there are no paradoxes, essentially.
All right, can you break that down for me in simpler terms?
Okay, so let me give you some examples. So you're familiar with synchronicity, right?
Right.
So let's say an example of synchronicity is um, maybe you're a big fan of whatever your favorite band is, uh, you know, Britney Spears or whoever, you just are biggest fan, and you're driving down a road, and the road ahead is obstructed. So maybe it's trees or a mountain range or whatever. You don't see it coming. So suddenly you get this idea or thought or a feeling like you're in a car with someone else or other people, and you're like, oh, it would be great to see this person in concert in my little hometown. I wish they would come here. I would be so awesome. That would be the best thing ever. You come around a corner and suddenly you see a billboard that just went up, and it's your favorite band, the one you just love and adore. And guess what? They're coming to your small town for a little venue to play. And you're like, oh my God, I was just talking about that. It's a sign, right? This has got to be a sign from the universe, the cosmos, God, whatever, that I'm supposed to be there, that it's meant to be, that, I was just talking about that, and here it is. And that would be synchronicity, is that kind of meaningful relationship, even though you're talking about it, you're thinking about it, didn't cause that billboard to go up. It was there long before you were thinking about it. But the two are related, apparently, even though it's not a cause and effect. So synchronicity is where we are responding to the influence of a future event that we haven't experienced yet, but is predetermined. So we're picking up on and responding to that. So it kind of takes the mystery or the kind of the mystique out of it, when you put it that way.
Let me ask you this. So are you saying that with a synchronicity, subconsciously you're aware of the future event
Correct.
and you're having some sort of, as you said, association with it, right?
So remember when I mentioned my nickname was Radar,
Mm-hmm.
which is a palindrome because the word is spelled the same forward and backwards. So you can think of synchronicity kind of like that. Now, when an event happens, we're going to respond to it a certain way. And, it's going to be, the event happens, you react to that event. And it kind of like a wave causes a chain of events after it. But it also happens in reverse. So you're going to respond to the event before it happens, but just in a reverse sequence. So rather than responding to it after it, sometimes we respond to it before it happens, and that would be synchronicity.
Okay, so you're responding to an event that you subconsciously already know is going to happen.
Correct.
Okay.
But that response is not responsible for causing the event. So
Right.
that's synchronicity. Now, retrocausality is like a kissing cousin of synchronicity, to where your reaction is actually causing the event to happen. And that is where the control system comes in place.
Right. Can you say that again, please?
So with retrocausality, that influence in the past is actually causing the event to happen. So it would be like you're a parent, you have children that are playing in the front yard. You suddenly get this worse thought, or you hear a voice saying your children are in danger, right? Well, as a parent, you're going to react. You hear a voice telling you, whatever the voice is, you hear a voice telling you your children are in danger, you're going to go check on them, react to it, and make sure your kids are safe. So you run out in the front yard and, run out in the front yard like a bat out of hell. And there's someone driving down the street just at that moment. And maybe you think that this car or whatever is the threat, and you come running at this vehicle, freaking a driver out, and a driver reacts to the guy, swerves off the road, and then nearly crashes into your kids and nearly kills them. So yeah, your kids were in danger, but the only reason they were in danger is because you reacted to the voice. And that's retrocausality. So if you had never heard the voice and never reacted to it, that car would have kept driving down the street like on any other day and nothing would ever happen and your kids were in no danger at all. But the fact that you reacted to the voice and tried to do something about it put the kids in danger, and it was self-fulfilling at that point.
Do you think this happens because there is some sort of unified field of energy or knowledge that you're tapping into, or the voice is talking to you?
Yeah, I've heard that before. Like, and I've thought about that too. About was it the Akashic records or something like that? There's some database out there that you're tapping into with all this knowledge or something like that. I believe that what I'm experience is just a natural part of how we interface with space time as part of normal. It's something everyone can do. It's not something everyone does do, but it's something we're all capable of doing. Um, just because we do it already, we just don't know it. So um, think about like manifesting, the law of attraction, prayer, even is all the same thing. It's just different names and approached differently. But I think all of them are dealing with this control system. And I can give you other examples of how it plays out and why.
Before you go there, it sounds like you're saying that the future is causing itself in the past.
Yeah, it's called a bootstrap paradox.
Okay, why does the future want to do that? If
Uh,
it does want to.
And that's where we'll explain it with my next example.
Okay.
So with my daughter, I have 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. And at the time, this was around the year 2000. My daughter was just an infant. She was crawling at the time. And there was an accident where she almost died. My neighbor, teenage daughter, was her babysitter, and she had brought her over for a brief moment to play with. I was home alone, and she comes running in through the front door, yelling and screaming my name. And I knew right away, by the way she was yelling my name, something was seriously wrong. And obviously, I figured I had to do something with my daughter. So I come out and I see my daughter is as blue as a freaking Smurf. And I'm like, oh my God. And she's obviously choking to death. I'm not getting any air at all. Her skin is just blue. I've never seen anyone turn blue like this before. And it freaked me out, especially, as your own daughter. And I grab her and she's still conscious. She's still aware. I can see my daughter's eyes looking, and she's just got this just shocked look in her face. But there's no breathing, no air coming out, and she was still a toddler, and I was freaking out and did not know how to proceed. I'm checking in their throat, looking for any obstructions, and trying to figure out how am I going to do the Heimlich on her without breaking her ribs, anything of that sort. And some quick thinking on my part and some unorthodox um, ideas, and I managed to basically hang her upside down and pushing on her abdomen at the same time that the object dislodged. She had swallowed a dime she found on a neighbor's floor and was choking to death on that. And that just horrified me. And after that accident with my daughter, I became almost OCD about being overly protective of her. And we had the staircase in the house, very steep staircase, and at the base of it was a rock fireplace. And when she got to the point where she was starting to walk, and we felt good enough that she can navigate the staircase, I would stop whatever I'm doing and escort her either up or down the stairs every time. As long as I was home, I couldn't do anything about when I'm not home. But if I'm home and she's going up or down the staircase, I would escort her, always staying below her. So whether she's going up or down, she's going to fall into me. And as I'm doing this, I created a mental exercise in my head. So I had this perfectly ideal situation where I would see her in her diaper, shirt, at a particular spot, rolling down the steps, and I would just drop my arms and scoop her up and and save her from falling into the fireplace at the bottom. So every time I would escort her, I would replay this exercise in my head over and over and over. And this went on for months and months and months, to the point where she became a pro at navigating these stairs, and never fell once. And I felt confident enough at that point that there was no more reason to escort her. She wasn't going to fall, as far as was concerned. So again, a few more months passed by, and one day I'm sitting in the living room on my computer, and I hear the voice, and a voice in a physical sensation. The voice tells me my daughter's going to fall down the stairs. At the time, she's nowhere in the living room. She was outside. And I'm thinking, okay, it's strange. So we'll see. So she comes in the house. She goes through the staircase, and then okay, I'll just escort her up the stairs. That'll keep her from falling. So I get behind her, get up a few steps up the staircase, and I stopped, and I think, this is ridiculous. My daughter's a pro at these stairs. There's no way she's going to fall down. I stood there and I watched. She walked up the staircase, got onto a little landing there was, and didn't turn right because the staircase continued around the corner and disappeared out of sight. And I'm standing there kind of just flabbergasted at this point, because all the times I heard the voice, and every time it told me something was going to happen, it always happened without fail. Never once did it not. So I'm kind of dazed and confused, lost in my own train of thought. And I hear the screaming, and I turn around, and I'm half kind of still dazed and confused. And I see my wife yelling, and I couldn't really make out what she was yelling, but she's pointing up the staircase. So I turn around, and I see my daughter rolling down the staircase towards me. And I almost reflex at this point, go down, scoop her up. But what was really weird was that when I turned around, the moment I turned around and saw her rolling down the staircase to the moment I scooped her up, was an exact copy of this mental exercise I had played in my head over and over and over every time I escorted her up those stairs. It was, exact. It was as if this mental exercise had programmed and created this reality. And I was just kind of flabbergasted at this point, because, again, the voice proved that it was always right. And again, it wasn't this case, but there was more there was something else under the surface going on here. And I couldn't quite figure it out at that time. And then a second accident happened with my daughter. And then a third accident happened with my daughter. And each time, especially with the second accident, I realized that my reacting to this voice was actually lining up the situation to cause the accident to even happen. So if I had never heard a voice, never responded to it, these accidents would have never occurred. So the problem then came, well, why were the accidents happening at all? And I realized that you know, time and our perception of it and consciousness are a lot more intertwined than I had believed at the time.
Well, it sounds like with these examples that retrocausality is a negative thing. You're creating these accidents.
It can be a negative thing if it depends on how. Oh, for one, I didn't know I was actually causing the accidents. It would take me a while to figure that one out. At the time, I was just petrified. I'm like, I realized that I'm causing these accidents, and I don't know how or what I'm doing to cause them, or how it works. I just know I'm petrified, because by the third accident with my daughter, I'm wondering how much longer is this going to go on? How many more accidents are going to happen with her, where I'm possibly injuring her, or putting her in danger, and yet all I'm trying to do is save her. So the way retrocausality works is it's it doesn't care. I mean, it really is just giving you your will, basically what you want. And in my case, I wanted to save my daughter more than anything else. I wanted to save her, the act of trying to save her. And that's what it basically gave me, was the experience or the act of trying to save her from danger.
Do you think that the outcome is already predetermined and there is no free will?
And that's another problem I've been, struggling with. So take the UFO encounter I had. I was at work. This was 9 o'clock. Go to Area 51. Now the actual encounter was around 10 o'clock when it happened. From like 10 o'clock to 10:10. It was like 10-minute long encounter. So the time from A to B, when I heard the voice to actually I heard the encounter, that whole hour would mean that everything I did between those 2 points was predetermined. Everything. Where I was going to go, what I was going to do, what I was going to say, what I was going to think, everything that led up to it. And yet, during that time when it happened, nothing I did was beyond my free will. Everything was a choice that I decided to do. So it's kind of like hypnosis. When you put someone under hypnosis, you can make them do all sorts of things, but they still will not do anything that goes against their free will. So, if you told them to do this, that's, really they don't want to do, they're not going to do it. And that's more or less how retrocausality works as well. It's going to allow you to do things, but keep you still within that free will, choices that you would make. You're not going to do anything you wouldn't otherwise already do.
What do you think about deja vu?
I know there are some who say, well, that's a glitch in the matrix, kind of like the movie Matrix. Um, I don't really give too much thought to deja vu. Certainly, I've experienced it myself. And it happens, but I don't have too much thought as to how it fits into the whole control theory.
You've talked before about a control system, right?
Yeah,
Do you have any physical or functional way of describing that system, or would you say it's just all something that's energetic?
I would say it's just an automation process. So think about your AC at home, right? The AC is responsible for controlling the atmosphere in the home, basically the temperature, hot or cold. So when you set the thermostat on what you set the temperature on your thermostat, is telling basically the thermostat what temperature the house needs to be set at. And it has a negative feedback control system to do this. So it's constantly measuring the temperature in your home. And say you set it on 72, your house is 75. Well, that creates an error signal because there's a difference between what the actual temperature is and what the desired temperature is. So that kicks off a control signal, which is telling the AC to turn on, and cools off the house until the temperature in the house and the desired temperature match, at which point it knows to turn off. So you can think of retrocausality and that same kind of analogy, is that you're manifesting whatever it is you want to manifest, your idea, as your desired temperature for the future, because it's a future event. So you're setting this future idea, and the control system says, well, that's what we need to achieve. And that's where we need to go. But there's a problem. On your current timeline, you're not going to get there. So we need to produce the required chain of events that will get you to that point. But to do that, we need to create a control signal, the control signal being the voice. You hear the voice, you respond to it, that then sets off a chain of events which brings you to what it is you wanted to manifest, that future. Well, whatever it is you had your mind on, it may not be something you wanted to manifest, but that's what the universe gave you because it's pretty much literal.
It sounds a little bit like, from what you're saying, that we live in a simulated realm here.
I mean, I kind of lean towards, yeah, some kind of simulation, an enhanced dream, something to that effect. Because, especially in the case with my daughter falling down the stairs, when it actually happened exactly as I envisioned, I mean, there are two trains of thoughts. One is I envisioned it that way because it was going to happen that way, or it happened that way because I envisioned it that way. And if that's the case, then that's no different than a dream. because in a dream, once you become lucid in a dream, you can basically do whatever you want on a dreamscape. And reality would seem to be kind of the same way. Only the only problem is you got causality now. You don't have to deal with that in the dream world, but in the real world, you do. So there needs to be a chain of events that's going to get you from A to B. And the control system is basically just an automated system that basically oversees these events when they occur, so that there's no paradoxes. That reality is self-consistent.
Have you experimented with not listening or reacting to the voice? And if so, what was the outcome?
Well, it's been almost 20 years now since I heard the voice. So after the accidents with my daughter, and there was one more incident where I lost time with the voice, that I decided to change my way of thinking and see what would happen, and change the way I thought about things, how I looked at things, did things, and that put an end to it. Now, I could probably do it again if I wanted to, but it's something I didn't really want to go down that road again or mess with that, especially you know having no control, at least over the outcomes. Because there was also another accident where I had injured a girl with the voice, and that was the incident before the UFO sighting. So it had been actually years by the time the Cody Area 51 event occurred since I last heard the voice because of another accident with someone.
I don't mean this in an insulting way, but most people don't hear a voice. Have you thought about why did you hear the voice? And if so, what's your reasoning?
Well, the voice is think about intuition. I mean, we all have intuition. That's the same thing. It's basically an intuitive voice. But that's how this control system works. You got to think we live in a linear world where everything is a progression of events, one to the next, to the next, to the next. But when you're dealing with retrocausality, you have a problem because you're dealing with a future event that's influencing the past. That's falls outside the realm of linear events. How exactly does that influence the situation by keeping it linear? So that's the purpose, I believe, of intuition, gut instinct. All of that is to provide a nonlinear information pathway for these control signals and retrocausal events. So for some, it may be a voice. It wasn't always a voice. And the third accident with my daughter was actually a vision. So I actually saw the accident happen. And the difference was with the other situations where every time I heard the voice, I would see with my own eyes the event unfold. But the third accident, I only heard it. I didn't actually see it. So in that time, rather than hear the voice, I actually saw a vision of the accident play out.
I feel like we all are manifesting our lives to some extent. So we should kind of be careful of our
Okay,
daydreaming and our thinking
exactly.
patterns.
So what I do now is some people call it thought canceling. You get negative thoughts in your head, whatever, boom, cancel, 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 get that crap out of my head, kind of thing. If I get any negative thoughts, vibes, whatever in my head, don't want to go there. Sometimes we let our imagination run wild. We haven't heard back from someone, whatever, we start worrying about them or something like that, and you start getting these negative vibes, ideas, and I just out of my head. I don't go there anymore. Whereas, in the past, I would. And as far as well, as far as manifesting things, so people tend to want to use manifesting or the law of attraction sort of thing for self gain, uh, money, cars, houses, material objects. Um, I tend to see that as a negative. even though most people say it's probably, what's wrong with more money or a nice house or car. But for me, these are material objects. I mean, yeah, it'd be great to have. I would love to have more money or a big house or a car or all that. But, it's not going to do me a lot of good when I'm dead. I would rather have things that empower me as a person, spiritually, grow rather than, waste it on something like that. So I've thought about, just try to hit the megabucks or something like that, use it for that. And I'm sure it could work. And I'm sure it's possible. But I mean, when we talk about free will, I mean, yeah, we have free will, and if that's how you want to use it, I mean, that's one way you could use it. But I tend to think if I were going to use it again, and this really kind of, say, not out there, but I mean, all of this is out there. But when we talk about God and the Bible and doing God's will and that sort of thing, everyone has if they believe in God, everyone has their own idea of what exactly God wants from us or what God's will is for us. And usually we'll say, well, God wants us to be kind in this, or give to charity or do that, or go, we all have our kind of idea of what it is God wants. But what if you use this going into it with no belief on what God wants from you? All you know is that you want to do God's will and use this to do God's will. Where will that take you? Because, you have no idea. If you have no expectations on what that is or what to expect, and you go into this trying to manifest you doing that, God's will, uh, that I think is kind of where it's supposed to go, or what it's intended to do, and what its purpose is. But to do something like that, that's some, even for me, that's some scary territory, because I don't really know what to expect. You're going, when you use manifest, you're like, I want to manifest a Cadillac. Well, I'm going to get a Cadillac, or I'm going to hit the lottery, or see a UFO. Even you know what to expect when you go into a manifestation like that using this. But I'm going to do God's will. I have no idea where that's going to take me.
Well, after watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you open to that? And if so, how can people contact you?
Well, I mean, people can always find me on Facebook. I have a Facebook page, like you found me through. You can just send me a message if they really want to reach out to me. I mean, I don't put myself out there a lot, but I'm there. So I'm sure people really want to talk to me. I'm sure they can search and find me.
Shawn, before we wrap it up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
One last positive message. Well, I say, keep a positive image, joy, peace.
I'll let you think about it for a second if you want.
Yeah, I need to think.
I guess you've never watched. I do this every video, and I don't expect you to watch my videos, so I caught you off guard. But if you want to think about it for a second and give me an answer, it can be something short. I don't know. Stay positive. Keep your mind on whatever you think. I don't know. I don't want to put anything in your mind.
A positive thought, huh?
Just give us something positive to go with for the rest of our. Give us a positive thought for the rest of the day.
Oh, goodness. In a world that's so negative.
You can say something like, we live in a negative world, so try to stay positive.
Yeah, that we do. So,
Shawn, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest.
all right. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.